We're waiting for technology.
Sorry, Nancy, or Natalie's training.
Okay, good evening. We're about to go live. We'll just pause until we get live stream going. And we're going. So, welcome everyone to the September 26th edition, 2022 of Council. I don't know about the rest of you, but I kind of feel like we've been away for quite a while without the August cycle. I can confirm we're live, and now we'll now call the meeting to order. And to start, I will ask Councillor Wiebe if you would please read the land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty No. 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thanks for that. And a special day to do it as we are at the beginning of the National Truth and Reconciliation Week. Hence, we are all dressed in orange to recognize September 30th, and we will have a celebration in Rivermill Park on Friday of this week. Starts at, I think, 1 o'clock out back here for a bit of a march, and then there's some activities going on in Rivermill for about an hour and a half. So everybody is more than welcome to come and celebrate Truth and Reconciliation with us. A resolution moved by Councillor Stone and seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting agenda dated Monday, September 26, 2022 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. Yes, I'd like to declare a conflict with respect to item 12.3.3 for personal reasons.
Thank you. Okay, we have two deputations tonight, the first in person and the second virtually. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dave Offelman, the Vice Chair of the hospital, of the mock board. I'm going to say foundation and realize that's wrong. And Cheryl Harrison, the President and CEO of Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare. Welcome, both of you. And if you'll just press your little buttons to get your mics live there.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to provide an update to you today. As you can see from the slide, we want to talk about our vision for 2 new hospitals. It's come much closer to reality in the last 6 or 8 months. We're really excited within the hospital, and now we need to work with our communities to take us the rest of the way there. As mentioned, I'm Dave Uffelman. I'm Vice Chair of the Hospital Board, and I'm also chairing the Capital Redevelopment Steering Committee. Co-presenting with me is Cheryl Harrison, our CEO, and unfortunately, Maureen Miller, our Chair of the Board, who is also continuing as Chair of the local share, is ill, and she is watching over us as we present. So, as I've said, the objective in the next few minutes is just to give you an update on where we are with the capital redevelopment. It's come a long way in the last 6 months or so. We need to start with a tremendous thank you for the support that we've had from this council and across the entire district. It's been a long journey to get to where we are, and there's been a lot of broad support. We need to acknowledge, really gratefully, the $115,000 that you set aside last year. And for your reference, the district has now done it over 2 years, and they've set aside a cumulative $1.6 million. The town of Bracebridge, again, it's been 2 years, and they're at $230,000 that they've set aside. The next slide maybe a little bit busy, but it shows the path we're on. And it's perhaps a little misleading for those of you who have been involved, and I know everybody's been watching for many years. It looks as if we're just at the beginning of this process. This has been a long process to get to where we are today. So there's really a lot of momentum to get to where we are. A few months ago, we were calling this Stage 2, but the ministry has renamed the stages. The stage we're at is now 1.3. We've had approval to this stage. We need approval now from the ministry of the 1.3. They gave us, in the announcement by the Premier in April, they gave us $14 million to fund us through stage 1.3 and all of stage 2. So they've given us the funding to do all of the planning through those next steps. And just to remind everyone, this is one project for 2 new hospitals. So in Huntsville, the hospital will be built on the existing site because there's enough land there to do that. In Bracebridge, it will be on new land. But new hospitals in both locations, here on existing site, Bracebridge on a new site. And from there, I want to flip it to Cheryl, who's going to walk you through some of where we are today and why we need to embark on this.
So I'm going to show you a couple of slides on why we need our new hospitals. You read about hallway medicine in Ontario, and a patient should never have to wait on a stretcher in a hallway for 6 or more hours, and that is being done in both our hospital sites. Hospitals should ideally run at about 85% occupancy. At MAC, we're running anywhere between as high as 130% occupancy on any given day. And as we know, our emergency department, this is the emergency department in Huntsville, and our diagnostic services are half the size they should be to handle today's volumes. So we like to imagine the possibility of what it could look like in our emergency department. This is a rendering from Trillium Health Partners in Mississauga. It's another picture of people waiting. Often people are waiting for treatment or the emergency department, and they're waiting in tight hallways. They're always anxious, and they're often in pain. Registering and waiting should be as comfortable as possible. Another reason for why we need the new hospital sites, the provincial standard is that we should be running at about 80% private rooms that house a single occupant patient. Our hospitals are only 15% private, with the majority of them being 2-bed or 4-bed rooms. Private rooms are not just a nice to have. There are overwhelming benefits from them. Beyond good infection control and privacy, which we certainly had our experience during COVID, consider the space and ability for family interaction. The lack of private rooms at MAC has been a considerable challenge during the COVID pandemic with isolation requirements. This is a private room with ample space, as you can see, all the technology in the room, and this is an example from Halton Healthcare in Milton. We also have aging infrastructure that by facility assessment is rated overall in poor condition. At the top is a nursing station on one of our inpatient units, and at the bottom is an area of our laboratory. In many ways, our old buildings don't meet current best practice for healthcare delivery. And with challenges in attracting and retaining healthcare professionals across Ontario, our dated facilities and lack of workspace should not be an additional barrier. Whenever we make changes, we must meet current standards. That almost always means the costs are multiple of what they otherwise should be if we were starting from scratch. Assuming the improvement is even possible, obviously limits our capacity to renovate. This is a rendering of a nursing station in Brockville General Hospital. So funding the project and what we know today, the bottom line on local share is that the community must contribute according to a formula. In the stage 1 proposal, 3 years ago, the local share was estimated at $74 million in 2019 dollars. And that was after we assumed $35 million in our transfer of assets and another $20 million from our foundations. Through stage 2, we will better understand the cost of future builds based on refined planning. The market has changed since 2019. Pandemic, inflation, goods and services, materials, etc. We will be working through a refreshed costing with the local share committee over the next several months, and we are relying on our foundations, local municipalities, the district, and our own organization to raise the local share. We can't let uncertainty prevent us from moving forward. At this point, no one knows the exact amount of the local share, nor exactly how much each entity will contribute. As the costing gets more refined over the next stage, what we do know is that we have to satisfy the local share requirement and commit to how the community will pay for its share of the new hospital. Setting aside funds now is far easier than putting it off to raise the same amount in half the time. And we can adjust allocations up or down once actual numbers become clear. Each entity has to participate starting now. We will do all we can from our end to keep this momentum moving through the process towards shovels in the ground. This is the single largest investment in Muskoka that will provide better care for generations to come. Help us make our community's new hospitals a reality, be part of this legacy, and give our future generations the best care in our hospital. Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Thanks for that presentation, and I'm going to open it up to council for questions. Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the update, for the presentation. You mentioned off the top that approximately a hospital should be running at about 85% capacity. Can you give us a snapshot of what the other regions in the province are running at? Are we an outlier with our, because you cited a pretty high number of 130% or give or take.
That's right.
Are we an outlier, or is it, how do the numbers look balanced across the province?
I would say if you compare us to in North Simcoe, Muskoka, we are on the higher side. However, most hospitals are well over 100% occupancy. Most are. But certainly when you look at us compared to some other hospitals in North Simcoe, Muskoka, we are on the high end.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thanks for the presentation. Excellent news. It's great to hear. With the funds we're raising, are they currently coming to you and they're being invested to continue to grow, or are they staying individually for each community?
No, we have not received them. They're with those who have set them aside.
Sure.
Is that a possibility of something that we could do, the money so it goes into a bank account and starts being invested today, so 10 years down the road, we're making money on our money? Go ahead.
I would think we could accommodate that.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. Very quick question. If you mentioned it, I apologize. With reference to the 130% capacity, overcapacity, is that, what's the impact of COVID in relationship to that? My understanding is that it's been like that for quite some time. COVID was part of it, but it actually is not necessarily part of it now.
Through you. The COVID certainly has shown us in the hospital sector and in this community the impact on our occupancy. We probably were underbedded in the first place. We do have some transitional beds, but they're one time right now. So we, you know, even when we take those beds and put them in the equation, often we're sitting at still 110%.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, I guess further to Deputy Mayor Alcock's comments, and I don't know if the province takes this into consideration when they give you the funds, but do we look at the projected, like we've got a lot of development going on in this area, looking at the build, is it gonna meet capacity by the time it's done? I mean, my grade 1 trip was to the new hospital at that time. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am now, but, I mean, obviously, we need a new hospital now, and I was 6 at that time when we did our grade 1 trip, and now we need a new hospital. So how are we projecting into this build that capacity?
Through you, Mayor. That's part of this stage planning. That's where we're getting down to the details. We'll be having demographic information. What will our new hospital look like? What type of healthcare will we need 20 years from now? And that will definitely factor into the planning during this stage.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Worship, and thanks for your presentation. I wonder if you could comment on what the impact will be on capacity when the 160-bed Fairburn opens up in the next couple of years. I mean, speaking, of course, to people that are occupying beds now that maybe shouldn't be in the hospital.
Yeah, what you're referring to is ALC, which is patients that ideally shouldn't be in the hospital. It's not the best place to care for them, but there's no place to move them on to. And long-term care is certainly one of the places they could be moving on to. More capacity would help. Long-term care is just one of those places. It could be care at home. There are other places people could be moving. ALC has been a huge problem for the hospital, I think for all hospitals across Ontario, and that would definitely provide some relief. That's the sort of thing that would work into this planning phase, but that is far from the whole solution. It would be a relatively small portion of it.
Follow-up?
Thank you. Can you tell me what percentage, if your beds are full now, what percentage today are ALC patients? Can you share that information?
Sure. I would say we're sitting anywhere between 25 and 30% on any given day.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, both of you, for this lovely presentation here tonight. Question I have, number one, first of all, a comment, and then a question, but it looks like from your timetable that we're looking at having 2 complete new hospitals in about 8.5 years. Is that a fair assessment of what I'm seeing here in this schematic we're looking at?
This is a best guess and a moving target. The previous stage, we heard that we might get approval within a year, and it was 2.5 years. So things change. At this point in time, this is a reasonable guess.
So obviously it would be to our advantage to be as far advanced in this whole process with the present government we have before the next election, I guess. So the question I have with regards to stage 1.3, what exactly do you mean by functional program?
A functional program is where you actually work with the consultants to take a look at how you do your business. So it's very detailed. You'll take a look at the emergency department, many user groups and patients, families, staff that will work with us to take a look at how we have to be structured for good function. And so you will get into the space. You'll also get into equipment needs, and that will really inform the footprint, and then, of course, the details for costing.
So the $14 million, is that going to be enough?
I would say right now that, again, best guess, based on the work we have to do in the next 2 stages, that it will be.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cheryl, when I started with the various task forces looking to build 2 new hospitals in Huntsville, or 1, or whatever it was, it seemed at the time that we had about 15 years to raise the money that we need to raise as a local share. And now I think somebody just mentioned we could be looking at as early as 8 years. In order to put the local share away, are we committing to doing it as quickly as 8 years, or do we still have something in the 12 to 15-year range?
Right.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, so One possibility would be some debt at some stage. If we knew what was coming ultimately, I think that's the more important thing, to know that we've nailed down the funding, and if it's not all in place by the time the hospital is completed, the debt could be paid off by funding that is still coming in some subsequent years.
So, and I guess we've made delegations at AMOs and ROMAs to the Minister of Health numerous times now, telling them that the local share for a municipality our size is an unfair number. And we've never heard them say, oh yeah, you're right, we'll change it. But what we did here this past August at our meeting with the minister was, and the question came up maybe 3 times during the deputation, and that was, do you think you're not going to be able to come up with your local share? And my sense was, if we said no, that they were going to pull the plug. So of course we didn't say no. But the local share, making that commitment is extremely important at this stage, which, as you mentioned, has to be done in the next 12 months, correct?
That's correct. We won't be able to put the submission in unless we have the commitment of local share.
And this commitment is being asked district-wide, certainly at the municipal levels, being Huntsville and Bracebridge, who we know have already contributed something, and the ask will be of the near north and East Perry Sound as well. That's correct?
Correct.
So, without putting words in your mouth, you really want us to make our commitment to start building that fund so that we don't jeopardize the future of our hospital.
That's correct.
Okay, I want to make that perfectly clear. Okay, you don't see any other questions, so with that, we do have a resolution. It's later on in our meeting that hopefully we will put on the table and pass, and I thank you very much for coming and presenting today.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nice meeting
much.
everyone.
Okay, our next deputation is the Huntsville Lake Bay's Chamber of Commerce, and I believe Kelly Haywood is going to join us virtually. Let's see if she can be brought in.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I can't see you, Kelly, but I can hear you.
Oh, I'm there. Oh, well, I mean, the video is going to be iffy for me anyway. Can you see me
There
now?
you are. Now we can see you, we
Okay.
can hear you, and the floor is yours.
Okay.
Welcome.
I'll just say my connection is a bit sketchy out here in the bush, so I may have to turn my video off, but thanks for seeing me today. I'm here to talk about our winter product development and specifically what we're going to be doing this winter in Huntsville. As you know, what we do in this particular context is all about, keeping Huntsville on the map and developing our season to be longer, not just for visitation, but for creating activity for our residents and seasonal residents. So we've already talked a bit about Eclipse at a previous delegation, but we will indeed be focusing on enhancing the Eclipse Walk with Light this year at Muskoka Heritage Place, including the addition of 3 new installations, plus some new projections, so that's sort of a new feature. We'll also be installing 2 new installations downtown. One, and we're working with the building owners, but on the King Street pedestrian walkway, which will be an overhead sort of a lighting canopy, which will be really beautiful. And then another one at Kent Park, and then a redesign of the town hall face. So that's sort of our Eclipse package for winter product development. We've already given you the statistics, but I can come back to that if you're interested later. The new Kent Park installation will indeed require the need for winter maintenance on the courtyard walkway, which we mistakenly assumed would be, in fact, maintained throughout the winter. Apparently, it is not planned to be, unless things have changed recently. My understanding is that there isn't currently snow removal currently planned, and we're sincerely hoping that this will be reconsidered. especially considering that this space has historically been maintained for parking. I would have assumed that this was part of the previous budget and going forward would be part of the plan for this space that's nice and open and I think could be used by the community for many reasons, particularly lit up with the installation that we're doing. If the paving or the patio stones are an issue, then I feel this is a huge oversight in the development of this park. And I'm really just so unclear about what the vision was for that space for the winter in general. So if there's anything we can do on that regard, I'm interested in having that discussion, but certainly we'd like to advocate that that space be maintained for the winter. I think over and above the use that we have intended, as a BIA board member, there's a vision of incorporating it into holiday market. I think there's lots of things that could be done there in the winter going forward. So if nothing else, just for pedestrians to cross through the park. We're very pleased to announce that we've received a grant for $51,000 to contribute to the town's line lookout skating rinks, or skating rink, if there's two, of which $15,000 is allocated towards hydro and the rest towards the enhancement of our rink or multiple rinks, which does include the lights itself in the 51,000. So 15 is for the contribution, our contribution towards hydro for that space, because I think lit will make a really, really big difference from a marketing perspective, from an enhancement perspective overall. I know it was connected to hydro in the past, so we're really hoping it's not that huge of an endeavor. I know staff were tasked to review this in June, so I'm anxious to know where that stands, because certainly having it ready for this winter is so important, and I'm happy to contribute my time. I don't have a lot of expertise, but if there's anything I can do in terms of reaching out and helping staff gather more information, whatever it needs to be done, I'd like to help. We also have approximately $125,000 allocated for paid marketing for all of our winter product development, over and above obviously what we have just mentioned. There's tons of other things going on this winter that we're going to be marketing within the context, obviously, of Eclipse downtown, any of other events that are happening. So that's a big nugget for us and for the town, and this is a collaborative initiative for all of us. And then we also have already invested approximately $10,000 in photography and video collateral for these elements. So in lieu of everything we feel we're bringing to the table, developing, promoting, we're respectfully requesting that the town consider providing us the same support we received last year, specifically as it relates to the plowing and sanding of Muskoka Heritage Place, which was estimated at about $4,000, along with our electricity use, which is estimated at about $1,000. So this will enable us to keep our entrance fees affordable at $5, continue voucher campaigns. I want to acknowledge that it does indicate that the bylaw has stated that if we are receiving money from the Accommodation Tax Association, which of course has been a considerable contributor to the capital of our eclipse lighting and so on, that we are meant not to approach the town. So this is in the bylaw, and I guess I'm requesting an exception in this case, as I would consider this endeavor to be truly a partnership. I have lots of statistics, not only about the reach that we had, but specifically about 3 or 4 excellent reviews that were on the Muskoka Heritage Place Google site that literally are saying, I came to Muskoka Heritage Place for the winter product and loved it, and I'll be back. And I really think that it's a phenomenal opportunity to highlight Muskoka Heritage Place over and above the benefits of what it's doing for our community in the wintertime. We're not asking for cash, just in kind, much like Ironman does, and they in fact approach the accommodation tax group as well. So yes, you have waived the rental facility fees for MHP, and I would have assumed actually that plowing and electricity would be part of that. So that's just a conversation that we want to have, but officially I am requesting that that be waived for this year. It is, as I said, a partnership, and any excess funds that arise as a result of admission or if there's more money than we think, all of that will be reinvested into next year's enhancements. This year we actually had $80,000 left over that we have folded back into the enhancements for this year, which also enabled us to leverage our budget so that we could get more funding from the province. So this is all good, and that's all I have for tonight, and I really appreciate your support in what we've accomplished to date.
Thanks, Kelly. Don't go away in case there's questions from council.
You bet.
You've done a great summary because I'm not seeing any questions. And hang on, Councillor Fitzgerald's going to ask one just so that this was all not for naught.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to congratulate everyone for all their efforts over at MHP. And the numbers are still staggering for me to believe that we had the opportunity to get that many more visitors to our community and local people to enjoy the eclipse and MHP in the winter. So kudos to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Kelly, the routine at the end of the meeting or towards the end, we'll have a discussion and a potential resolution.
Wonderful. Have a nice evening.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye.
Okay. I have a resolution. Moved by Councillor Weeb, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the following council meeting minutes be adopted as printed and circulated. Special Council July 25th, 2022, and July 29th, 2022, and Regular Council July 25th, 2022. All in favor? And that carries. And reports from committees. And I get to start with the Huntsville Library Board, and that was many, many moons ago, like about 3 months ago, so the minutes are there, and if there aren't any questions, I'm not going to try to highlight them. Okay. Councillor Stone, the Downtown Huntsville BIA.
Thank you. You've probably seen at the bottom of our agenda tonight are 3 motions from the BIA. One is the ask for the town to clear Kent Park for the BIA purposes, but also, as you just heard, for the chamber purposes as well. The second one is to ask for more plowing on the sidewalks, make it wider than it was last year. And to that end, the third motion is to change our sign bylaw to prevent businesses putting out their A-frame signs between December 1st and March 30th. So there's lots of room for the plow to move around. Since we're not having meetings in October, so I'll talk about Halloween. So Saturday, October 29, Tiny Tots Parade is at 10 a.m. And then between 5 and 9 is the Halloween Bash in Rivermill Park. Plus, ready? Illuminate the Night drone show is back. Hopefully they stay in the air a little longer this time. That's at 7 p.m. sharp, all happening on Saturday, October 29. And that's all I have from the BIA.
Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you for that, and you can stay there and do Committee of Adjustment.
Committee of Adjustment, we had 12 applications. It was a very long one for us. It's usually quite short. 4 were recommended for denial. 3 were revised and subsequently approved, and 1 was deferred. And with that, I have no other information.
Questions? Seeing none, we will go to the Huntsville Lake Bay's Chamber of Commerce update. Councillor Weeb.
I'll basically skip over what Kelly has just informed us about and some of the product development. That's going to be the focus for the chamber right now. So I won't repeat what was just said. So thanks.
And the final one is the Municipal Accommodation Tax Tourism Board. And I can say that we are very close to having a strategy developed. We've been working with 413. It was hoped that they might have been able to come with a draft of it to council tonight, but, or maybe Wednesday, but it hasn't happened. We don't have a draft approved at the board level yet, but it's getting close. And their deadline's coming up, so it's a good thing it's getting close. That's it for committee meetings. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes dated July 26, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Councillor Armour, do you have highlights?
Thank you, Worship. The minutes there for be the read. I think the key highlight was that we did approve the 2023 to 2027, the Huntsville Accessibility Plan and Accessible Accomplishments. So that was a highlight. And just one other thing, I'd like to just thank the committee members. We have our last meeting tomorrow, and I'd like to thank them for their commitment for the last 4 years to the Accessibility Committee, and I hope that they all apply next term, and we see their faces again.
Yeah, thanks for that, and my thanks to the committee as well. It's hard to believe that 4 years is up. I will ask the vice chair of the accessibility would like to.
Well, yeah, I was just going to comment that some of our conversation that happened at the last meeting, as some of you have maybe noticed, for tomorrow's meeting, we are going to talk about downtown Huntsville and accessible parking, because that did come up as quite an issue when we had our discussion at the last meeting. So I'm glad to see it on the agenda for tomorrow to discuss.
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thanks. Through you to Councillor Schumacher. With regards to the accessible parking, with our new configuration downtown, do we have less parking now than we had before? What's the major problem?
What came up is that down near the little place by the lights, those 3 spots, there used to be one that was an accessible parking, and so now the accessible parking is kind of right in the middle of the street. And so I know for myself, I took a friend who needed a walker to the concert on the dock on the 31st of August. And again, we had a lot going on that night. It was great in town here because we had downstairs, United Way had done their presentation. Parking was full. But again, to have to unload somebody with a walker, even with a parking pass, the closest one is up, and I guess I'm a Huntsvilleite. The old TD Bank is the Zara's or whatever it is now. That's like the closest accessible parking to that end of town on the back side, and then of course in front of Town Hall is the closest accessible to that end of
So
town.
prior than, Dion, we had accessible parking then closer to Burnell Road? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there used to be one in that 3.
And a little bit more
Yeah.
level parking too,
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you've all heard the resolution. All in favor? That carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that General Committee meeting minutes dated July 27th, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated, with the exception of recommendation number GC 14122 to be pulled and voted on separately. And let me rephrase that as moved by Councillor Withey and seconded by Councillor Wiebe. All in favor of General Committee? That carries. And the resolution that was pulled, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Armour, be it resolved that committee concurs with the community brand direction as presented by TWG Communications at the July 27th, 2022 General Committee meeting, and further that staff be directed to continue to work with community partners on brand collateral rollout. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that Council postpones recommendation GC 14122 to the November 7th, 2022 Council meeting for staff to obtain additional information and clarification on the use of the logo and overall brand strategy being provided. Can I do questions on the postponement? Are there any questions on? All in favor of the postponement? Oh, sorry, Councillor Withy?
Sorry, you turned your head and I put my hand up. That was my apologies. Quick question. That original motion that we're deferring, did that actually accept that brand as the brand we're going for? Because that sounds to me that the wording of that was just to work further for brand rollout, when I didn't think we were giving the thumbs up to what they presented. Have I got that?
No, the original motion said that we would concur with the direction provided, and they would continue to roll. That's what we're deferring to November 7th, to get a little bit more information provided. The presentation wasn't quite as clear as to the use and what the future looked like. So we want staff to bring back a more fulsome report.
So the question would be to define concur with the direction, because that could be construed as, we like what you've done, let's keep that thing moving forward, when in my mind, I wasn't on board with that at that point in time.
So that's the motion we're postponing. We're not passing that motion, we're postponing it.
Councillor Alcock is nodding her head, and as I usually agree with her, I'm gonna go with that.
Are there
Thank
any
you.
other questions? Councillor Schumacher?
Through you, Your Worship, yeah. So is this because there's kind of a debate as to whether it's municipal brand and community brand and what the difference kind of is? Because I think a lot of people were confused around
Yeah,
that
and I
piece.
think
Okay.
that's what we're hoping to get presented, a lot more context into what it's all
I
about.
brought an old one too, if anybody really wants to see the Wild About Huntsville.
I remember that one.
You know, looks like bug splatter on your windshield. We've done a few, so, yeah.
All in favor of postponement? And that carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting minutes dated September 14th, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our planning meeting wasn't as long as the Committee of Adjustment meeting. That was unusual. And I'll be very brief. We weren't exactly in sync at this committee meeting. Every recommendation presented by staff, committee either changed the direction or decided to go another way. So we had 4 zoning applications before us, and the first one was a recommendation for denial, and committee decided to approve. It was for an additional 3 new rural lots on Lindgren. Second one was a creation of a detached secondary suite in what was considered a waterfront area, and after a lot of discussion, committee felt that it was an acceptable application, so staff were recommending denial, and we approved. The third one was actually not, we were in sync on this. We weren't supposed to have a recommendation to move forward, but we in fact did, and that was for changing zoning to allow for 10 cabins, resort cabins with cooking and sanitary facilities on Brunel Road, with an attached center for service to those cabins. And it was supposed to be an information item, and we actually ended up approving it. The fourth item, staff were recommending approval, and committee, after quite a bit of discussion, after hearing a lot of concerns from the public, was in reference to a proposed hotel to be built on Haynes Road. And there was also a site plan approval application as well. And the application was asking for an increase in height to allow for the proposed development. And as I said, there was a lot of concern from the surrounding community and a lot of concern by committee as well. So we deferred that item so that further work could happen on that application. Finally, there was another site plan approval that was approved for ready-mix concrete on Stevenson Road 8, and that is my report.
Thank you. Questions? All in favor? That carries. Okay, we're on to reports from municipal officers. And our first one, Ian, are you going to come up? You take your time. It's going to take me forever to read this motion. Moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Wiebe, whereas the Township of Lake Bay circulated a request for proposal for information technology services whereby the town of Huntsville was the successful bidder, and where staff are required to obtain council's final approval of the agreement, now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to enter into an agreement with the Township of Lake Bays for information technology services for option 1 from October to December of 2022 and transitioning into option 2 on January 1st, 2023, subject to obtaining adequate insurance coverage to the satisfaction of the CAO. And further that the information technology manager be authorized to hire for the following 2 full-time additional positions, and that all costs associated with the new positions be budgeted as follows. Junior technician hire October 2022 to be funded from the Human Capital Reserve, 2023 and beyond from the operating budget. Information security specialist hire in January 2023 and to be funded from the operating budget. And further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement, and further that pursuant to Section 275 of the Municipal Act 2001 regarding restricted acts after nomination day, as council is restricted from ratifying the authorization of this resolution, the execution of the resolution be subject to the delegation authority provided by the Chief Administrative Officer by bylaw 2022-27. Ian.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Unfortunately, obviously, a lot of the details have been covered. We were selected by the Lake of Bays to provide their information technology services. We are looking to get that started as soon as possible. We're looking somewhere in October if possible. We also are looking, as discussed, we are looking to hire that junior technician that's going to help us do that initial implementation and start taking the load off here at the town and provide the extra services here. Are there any questions? I apologize. I know we've discussed most of the details in the past. There really has been no fundamental changes from our previous discussion, aside from that we're phasing in the options instead of picking one or the other. We're just stepping into the option 2 through option 1.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks. This is good stuff. I think it's great. What was Lake of Bays doing before? Do you?
They have a contractor that they're using that's
okay.
out of an area just north of us. It's a single person organization.
Yeah, no, this looks great. I would assume they already have insurance, but anyways. There might be some errors and omissions in there, but thank you.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. Just another well done. It's just nice to see us collaborating with Lake of Bays, just like we do with the fire department, now with the IT department. So all this duplication, we can get down to, so it's exactly what we want to do. Good job.
Thank you.
All in favor of the resolution? That carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that staff be directed to proceed with the direct purchase of a self-contained washroom with 2 units at a cost not to exceed $300,000 plus applicable taxes pending the execution of the donor agreement. And further that council exempt the CAO from section 4.33 of procurement bylaw 2021-21 to allow for a purchase outside of a budgeted amount. And further that pursuant to 275 Municipal Act regarding restricted acts after nomination day, as council is restricted from ratifying the authorization of this resolution, the execution of the resolution be subject to the delegated authority provided by the Chief Administrative Officer bylaw 2022-27. Tarmo.
Well, I don't think we could let this term of council go without one more round at Rivermill washrooms. this is a good news story as far as I'm concerned. This is a washroom kit that was seen by members from the town of Huntsville that were at AMO. That's how it came onto our radar. It's a ready-built kit that comes, basically, we do the site prep, put a concrete pad down, draw the services in there, and then a crane lifts the actual washroom pre-built right onto the pad, and it gets installed that way. As we did a little bit of research on this, there was only one company initially, but we found a second one now. So we're just waiting to hear back from that second company to get competitive quotes to see where they would come if they are able to provide us with a washroom solution. One thing that happened at the BIA board meeting, at the last board meeting, was that you'll see the letter attached to the agenda here, is that their support for this initiative, but that they are very clear they want at least 2 washrooms. And that's what we're checking with the second vendors to see if they have a solution, because on their website, it doesn't show anything with a 2 washroom configuration. The washroom is really interesting. It's high technology. It self-cleaning. It has germ protection on it that's sprayed annually. It's monitored remotely. You can lock it remotely, unlock it remotely. Basically, if anybody's in there doing untoward things, you can warn them, tell them in 15 minutes it's about to wash itself and sanitize, get out now. This is kind of a modern masterpiece. We would put it in the originally intended location. The good news part about this is that we would be able to turn this around probably late spring of '23.
Questions? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, I guess. I don't even know who to direct this to. With regards to the letter from the BIA, with regards to asking for an additional washroom, I guess the point I would make is that when we have a special event down there, usually those providing the event or the sponsors of the event provide additional porta potties anyway, do they not? And I'm just wondering if it really would be necessary to have 2 washrooms down there. And I guess maybe I'm just throwing that open for discussion, but it would seem to me that may be not necessary. The big demand for washrooms is when we have like the beer festival or whatever, and they provide additional washrooms at that point. So just a point I wanted to make, and I'm just curious as maybe others have a thought about that.
Darmo?
Through you, Your Worship, I don't think it was 2 washroom buildings that were intended. I think for clarity, it's 1 building with a choice of door A or door B.
So does this company do that?
The one company from Quebec that was at the AMO conference does provide it with, 2 in 1 building, and the other one, the only thing I've seen on the website is a single seater, such as it is.
So for that, if I might, Your Worship, is that still, the cost of that then still fall within the $300,000, or are we looking at additional money to?
Through you,
go that
Your
extra
Worship, it is $300,000 for the 2-seat through that initial company that we've researched.
Just out of curiosity, when Councillor Thompson raises that, the technology where they're self-cleaning, and I know they lock up, but do we know whether the self-cleaning is staggered so that one would be available when the other one was cleaning?
I don't know the answer to that, but since it is technology, I would hazard to say that we could probably program it in that kind of a way.
Deputy Mayor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Tarmo. I think the question's been answered. I was looking at the graphic in the package, and that's what I'm assuming we're looking at and voting on it. It was the 1 building, 2 washrooms, all good, both accessible.
Yes.
Right? Thank you.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. In response to your query, you can set them up to clean like in the middle of the night. Like everything's automatic. So if we lock them at night, then you can clean them.
Oh, but they clean every 15 minutes.
Well, then, do they?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to have them cleaned every 15 minutes. I think that's kind of, you can program them. You'd have to clean them after some people went in there.
Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tormo, if, I guess, push comes to shove, if we can't, for some reason, acquire the two-in-one building, and we'd have to go with two standalone units, would that blow the budget, or would there be a chance of bringing that in under the 300,000?
Through you, Your Worship, to that, I don't know the answer. That's something I would have to look into.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Schumacher.
Through you, Your Worship, I don't know the answer to your 2-in-1, but I know in France, that's the single ones is what they have, and they do the self-cleaning every 15 minutes when I was there, and they just lock it up, and hopefully, yes, you're not in there when it happens.
I guess it all sounds good. I take it when we get a quote from the second company, we'll make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges.
Yes, Your Worship, absolutely.
All in favor? That carries. And you're hanging around for,
A little while.
moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that council approves an amendment to motion GC 9622, Resolution 13422 as follows. $350,000 be struck out and replaced with $376,000. And this is about a new plow truck.
That's correct, Your Worship. So we received authorization from council for the purchase of one plow truck this year, in addition to a 3-ton vehicle. The 3-ton vehicle came in at under budget, and we've gone ahead with awarding that tender, and it should be coming our way hopefully in the early new year. The plow truck, on the other hand, came back well over budget for a number of different reasons, most of which we've heard over and over again at this point in terms of parts prices and supply and all of that. So this is just to get council's authorization, or at least awareness, on the actual price. There was only one vendor that bid on the product, and at this point, we wouldn't be taking delivery until November 23 at the earliest. So it is important that we get it in this year, otherwise we're going to be pushing into 24's winter before we actually see this plow truck. The plow truck that we are replacing has seen better days. It's requiring an immense amount of work to keep it on the road.
Councillor Worthy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tarmo, you mentioned that the other truck came in under budget. Does that money at all go to offsetting this over budget piece, and how much was that?
So through you, Your Worship, I don't have the dollar value of the under budget in front of me here, unfortunately, so I don't have it at the top of my mind. It does come from the fleet capital reserve, so in essence, it does in a way offset, but it's not a direct offset because we're budgeting per vehicle.
So that number, so this extra $26,000 is just the full overage. It's not taken in the other amount.
Through Your Worship, yes, that's correct. That's the full overage.
We don't, it comes from capital reserve, so.
It doesn't matter. Could make this easier to swallow if it was only 10 grand.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I'm just curious if we're looking 2023 or 11/20 before we get this truck. Should we be looking at purchasing in advance through our capital plan? I'm sure we have something in 23 we got to replace. It's probably not going to be here till 24, and vice for 25. I just wonder if maybe we should look at that early this year, and maybe get a second order in there so we get our trucks replaced. Just a thought.
Through you, Your Worship, that's what we had done with these trucks, is order them early. So this was a purchase in 22 for a 23, or yeah, it was the ordering. We were ordering a truck to be delivered in 23 in the 22 budget year. So it was 1 year early for replacement. So we can look at doing anything in the future.
All in favor of the resolution? That carries. Where reports? Oh, we're still in reports. Okay, the Town of Huntsville Operations Center, Medill Building Condition Assessment. It's an information only, so I don't have a resolution, but Tarmo, you're still up.
Two to go here. So this has not been previously reported to council. We did finish an inspection of the Medill Operations Center site. Tulloch Engineering was engaged to do the assessment. They had two engineers come out in March and walk through all aspects of the building. The actual engineering, the draft engineering report is attached to my report. Bottom line for this is that they didn't recommend doing any upgrades or repairs to the building other than those that are required to maintain the health and safety of staff that are working there. Beyond that, their recommendation was for replacement of the building. So looking at options for replacement, that's going to become the new work here and will be discussed, I think, and there is an option being discussed in closed session tonight related to that.
Okay, so that's for information. We'll have part B, I guess, in closed. So we have one more report that is information only, and that is on the Veterans Way construction update.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Veterans Way construction is well underway at this point. It's being done in two phases. Phase one being from Brunel to west, and then phase two from west to center. The construction is primarily for the replacement of the storm sewer system and upgrading the storm sewer system to take larger volumes. It is a main trunk line for the town running down Veterans Way. In the 22 budget placeholders for road work, we had budgeted originally $750,000 for that. The actual work came in at much higher than that. I don't want to misquote myself here. I want to say it came in at just over $1.2 million for the entire project. And an amount from the federal government is being covered off in that. $628,000, just over $628,000 will be covered off by the federal government by what was formerly known as the federal gas tax funding, but now known as the Canada Community Building Fund. So this is just to bring council's awareness to the fact that the price tag on the very required work was much higher than what was originally anticipated. However, in the overall roads budget for the road replacement work and storm sewer replacement work, we're still at or under budget for that part of it. It just means that we have to delay or put off other works that are normally budgeted for in that line.
Questions? We'll anticipate every town block to cost $1 million from now on. Scary. All right, we are at bylaws. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that bylaw numbers 2022-107 to 2022-119 inclusive be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 26th day of September. And those bylaws are all listed in your agenda package. All in favor? And that carries. Information report on the, from the Integrity Commissioner, and is anybody highlighting that, or is it just in your package, you've seen it? It doesn't look like we had any issues for our entire term of council, I'm happy to say. It's nice to at least highlight that, isn't it? Okay, so we are at a resolution for the hospital local share from our presentation earlier on. It's long. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Wiebe, whereas the province of Ontario has confirmed that both Bracebridge and Huntsville will each maintain a hospital within their community, and whereas the hospital in Huntsville will be a new build on the current site, and whereas the cost of the two hospitals will be approximately $580 million, with the Ministry of Health contributing approximately $506 million, and the Muskoka-Algonquin Healthcare Foundations and community contributions totaling approximately $74 million local share. And whereas the province has approved the two-site model to proceed to Stage 2 functional program, and whereas a requirement of the Stage 2 functional program application is a local share commitment, and whereas without this commitment, the construction of the hospitals will not proceed. And whereas Council recognizes the importance and benefits of the Huntsville Hospital, is contributing to a healthy community, and is committed to assisting and planning for a successful future of healthcare. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to bring a report back to the next regular council meeting on potential local share funding contribution options for inclusion in the 2023 budget and beyond. Questions? I think I just have one, and that is that the resolution says to bring back a report on local share options, whereas I thought the resolution that we were going to entertain was to direct staff to put a local share into the draft budget.
So through your worship, I might defer to the treasurer, but I can certainly address it. I know when we had discussions, obviously we've been having conversations with the District of Muskoka as well as the town of Bracebridge. And the issue is we still don't exactly know what that number is. So this resolution before council tonight is a commitment that staff will continue to work that out and bring back an actual amount that we can place in the agenda. With your permission, I would like to defer to the Director of Finance to see if she would like to add anything to that statement.
Julia?
Yes, thank you. So I think the intention is to, as CEO Corey said, is to bring back a report and provide some options for council to consider. There's a lot of unknowns for the numbers, so I think what we need to do is come up with a starting point, and we will bring back a report that does have some recommendations in it for that starting point so that we can put that in the draft budget.
So you were talking about recommendations of how to fund it, not whether to fund it.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship. And I think if we're going to ask staff to come back with a report, I'm wondering if we should have tiered amounts and impact on levy, if that is in fact where it's coming from, or what sources it's coming from. Let's find out what the impact is at that time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the report. And that's coming back in November, correct? Yeah, okay. Councillor Withey?
Thank you. With all due respect, I think that number's going to be impossible to come up with in November. I think there's just too many variables in there, and it just boggles my mind how you're going to, I guess if you can just decide how to do it or where it goes, but to actually know what that number should be, it's next to impossible, because we're talking about even $580 million today, which 10 years from now will be double that, probably. So what's the number going to be?
And I get that we don't know what the number will be, but what we need to do is make the commitment. It doesn't have to be the commitment to a number, it has to be a commitment to the local share, and that commitment has to come from the district-wide of Muskoka, East Perry Sound, and the north. We don't have to find the whole 75 million here.
I understand, but then we could just say, yeah, we make the commitment and do it right now. What are you
But
waiting
we
for?
do need some options of the best way to fund it. So for instance, last year, we put away 115, but we used one-time funding, so we can't grow on that. Whereas the district in Bracebridge, they put it into their levy so that they could grow it each year. We need to look at those options going forward.
Okay.
Before our 15 years has become 8, and before 8 becomes 2. Anyways, all in favor? And that carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Thompson, whereas a motion was passed by the BIA requesting winter maintenance to Kent Park for a usable community space year-round. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to the November council meeting on costs of winter maintenance for the park. Questions? Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not really a question. I actually support the motion from the BIA. I think it's something we ought to do. But in the meantime, this is just saying bring a report back in November, and I guess I can support that, unless there was interest from anyone else to just support the request.
Councillor Weed?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess just for clarity as well, are we all on the same page with what it means to maintain it in the winter? I mean, are we talking about, clearing every kind of square foot of it and all the bench areas, or is it a central area where you can walk through? Because Kelly did sort of mention we have to make sure we maintain at least at a minimum pedestrian walking abilities and gathering. But getting in and sweeping under the benches and all that is a different sort of kettle of fish.
You and I are on the same page. I thought that it should be a report back, not just on the cost, but of the type of maintenance that is being proposed.
Right.
I don't know whether we need an amendment or whether that would be a given.
Through your worship, so it is typically our standard that we would put all furniture away in the winter, so that would just be an expectation. That wouldn't be out, the chairs would be away, the benches would be away. We have lots of natural features there, such as the rocks, which will be, I think, suitable for seating in the winter. So the maintenance, the rocks can't be put away, unfortunately. I think the maintenance would strictly be for shoveling the area and maintaining the snow, but everything else would be put away, unless there's further direction from council. Otherwise, we would put it away.
Would that mean we would shovel off the rocks? I mean, no, I think the type of maintenance that is being proposed is important to know. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe we could suggest to staff that they engage with the BIA and the chamber and figure out what's required and bring it back in the report.
Councillor Armour, did you have your hand up?
I did, Your Worship, but the CEO actually, when I was going to mention the fact of putting all the furniture away annually, so it wouldn't be any furniture, so.
Councillor Schumacher.
And I guess, yes, I would agree, and through you, Your Worship, to meet with BIA, because I know there's talk of putting a Christmas tree in there, so what is going to come and go through that space?
Do you want an amendment for that, or you hear that? Okay, staff here. All in favor? And that carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Thompson, whereas a motion was passed by the BIA requesting an amendment to the town's sign bylaw to restrict sandwich board displays with the exception of special events on sidewalks from December 1st to March 30th. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to the November council meeting with a proposed bylaw amendment to address this request. Questions? Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our sandwich boards currently come out in the daytime and go back inside when they close, do they not? So snow removal is usually done at night, so I don't think they leave them out, do they?
Councillor Stone?
So yes, they usually come out in the morning and go back when they close the business, but the sidewalk plow goes by during the day when it's snowing through the day. So it gives the plow more space, doesn't have to go around it, and we're hoping they can do some cutouts as well, which means they have to turn that big plow, but that's still to be determined.
Just to follow, I'm curious, the BIA, I would imagine, would have reached out to all the store owners, and they're all on board with this? You know?
Oh, sorry, through you? It was a decision made at the board level, to go ahead and ask for this. So, no, it wasn't asked globally from the businesses.
Councillor Schumacher.
And of course, through you, Your Worship, the report would include any AODA restrictions with sandwich boards being out and all the maneuvering, I'm assuming, correct?
Counselor Stone?
This is an effort to make more room for the plow and the sidewalk, so ADOA will be happy with anything.
All in favor? That carries. Busy BIA meeting. Moved by Counselor Stone, seconded by Counselor Thompson, whereas a motion was passed by the BIA requesting maximum sidewalk snow clearing within the BIA to better enhance downtown aesthetics and access to businesses. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to review the BIA snow removal and sidewalk maintenance bylaw 96102 and report back to the November council meeting with the snow clearing options within the BIA, including additional costing and staffing requirements. Questions? Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm wondering if this is too early because we haven't actually had a winter with the complete new configuration of downtown. So I'm just wondering if this isn't something that shouldn't be put on ice for next year. No pun intended.
Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Your Worship. In response to that, last winter, when the sidewalks were mostly built, I was asking about when the banks were going to be cleared, and the response I was shocked to get was, that the increased width of the sidewalk were meant for snow storage, which totally took me off guard and totally I disagree with, because that's still banks that people crawl over, and it's still dirty snow from sand and stuff on the streets. So that was the response I got then, last winter. So I don't know if that was the original plan when the sidewalks were widened, that, oh, hey, we've got the spot for snow to sit all winter, but I certainly don't agree with that. So there was questions last winter about it, so thank you.
Councillor Stone?
In response to that, and perhaps Tarmo may want to speak to it as well. So that is not the BIA's understanding. We like the banks to be cleared and have spoken with operations about that being done. Now, clearly, the new trees and the boulders can't be moved, so there will be snow around those, but every place else, we're hoping will be cleared on a regular basis.
Okay, I guess, Tarmo, unless you want to add anything, we'll get a report in November. Good enough? All in favor? The BIA is going to be contributing to a long November meeting, too. Under new business, we have a petition for Ripple and Pallet Lake Road repairs for information.
Can I, real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, no, this just came from, through me, essentially. The residents out that way have been hoping for perhaps a review or an increase in service to the summer maintenance. And I wanted to, they gathered their signatures together in unison to ask that we have another look at it, our staff have another look at it. And I don't know if a motion, there's one in the can if we should need one, or if our staff have heard it loud and clear. And we'll be kind of maybe reviewing, re-examining that for next year's season.
Okay, I think maybe we do have a resolution here, and if we have a mover and seconder, and if you actually want that review done, we're probably good to get some names on this.
Okay, then I will put that forward.
Moved by Councillor Weeb. Oops, I won't sign that. And is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Alcock? Be it resolved, the staff be directed to evaluate service levels on Pallet and Ripple Lake roads and report back with options to expedite road repairs in the area. Any questions? Councillor Armour.
I just wonder if maybe Tarmo could speak to what the current status, or what the current schedule is for that road. What do we currently do there?
Tarmo?
Through you, Your Worship, I don't have that status readily at hand. I may have it shortly. If I dig through some of my files, I would just have to look up the...
Follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just curious whether it's seasonal or is only summer maintained?
I don't know the classification off the top of my head. I apologize. It is seasonal.
Seasonal? Counselor Thompson?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment with regards to this issue. I'm no longer a resident in that particular area, but I feel close enough to it at this point that I think I'll just back away from the discussion and the vote on this particular issue, if I might, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Weed? No? Yep.
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm good.
Okay. All in favor of the resolution? And that carries. And winter product development. Kelly Haywood's deputation from earlier for in-kind services for Eclipse. Sanding and plowing of the MHP roadway and electricity, which according to her totaled somewhere near $6,000. I'm going to ask Director Maxwell if she can just speak to the issue about when something's funded through HMATA, it's not supposed to be additionally funded through the town. Would you mind highlighting that for council?
Through you, Your Worship. That's absolutely correct. The transfer payment agreement that the town has with the HMATA group highlights that if HMATA is providing funding to any organization, that they then shouldn't be turning to the town and requesting additional in-kind or cash contributions towards whatever their funds are being received for. It further says that if we're approached, the town is approached, then the funding should be void and repaid to HMATA in that instance. So that's how the agreement is structured right now.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question around that. Does the agreement allow for exceptions?
It doesn't appear to have anything in it that would permit that. So that's something we would have to review.
Seems like an idea.
That clause was added to the agreement just about a year ago, and it was to ensure that when the community was looking for funding, they went to HMATA, and that I think we had an instance where somebody was coming to us and they had gone to HMATA and they weren't aware that I think it was all going to happen. So I think it was back when Scott Oval was still here, they added that clause to sort of steer away from the double dipping kind of thing, because the amount of funds in effect come from the town to begin with. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. I think, though, that, and it's good knowing that that's the history. I think this is an exception. You know, I for all of the reasons Kelly talked about, you know, this is a huge benefit to the town, and it's not a huge sum of money. And she had, I thought, a very good rationale as to why this makes sense. So I'd support the request.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. Through, I'm just curious, did we ever resolve the hydro issue up there? Because I believe was there not an issue with getting hydro to the skating rink area?
This isn't for the rink, this is for the
just
MHP.
lights? Oh, okay.
This is just
Sorry,
MHP,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess through you to Kristen. It talks about funding. It doesn't talk about services, right?
Through you, Your Worship, the actual clause speaks to funding or in-kind requests. So it covers everything, really. And it does note, that it's considered the town's 70% of the MAT proceeds are considered to be, that are being donated to the association, or what we're considering as our contribution.
A follow-up?
Yep.
Do we have staff there in the winter?
We funded staff last year for the program. I think we funded it to about $41,000. We're not funding staff this year.
One more follow-up? So
Sure.
we're not funding staff, but do we have staff there that they're paying for, or no staff?
They would have staff, yes. The CAO is telling me sometimes we have staff there. Further questions? Is anybody interested in making a resolution? Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Do I have to come up with wording? We don't have a potential resolution on hand.
Do we have anything, Tammy?
Councillor Fitzgerald has a good one, so
Councillor Fitzgerald?
I probably will support his resolution.
In light of the CAO saying that we do have staff there, I think it may be in our best interest to keep that property maintained.
Right.
Never mind the in-kind contribution, and just
You may.
a health and well-being and safety thing.
So, thank you, Your Worship. I will have Director Babineau clarify with respect to staffing. So with respect to Deputy Mayor Alcock's question about is there a provision in the agreement that would allow for an exemption, that would be simply council exempting
Right.
from the bylaw, because you own that bylaw that was approved. So even if there isn't anything in the agreement that allows for the exemption, certainly this council has the ability to do that. I did share the report with council that was presented in July, just so that you had it before you. And it does speak to costing. It talks about the rental of MHP, what would typically take place for that. It talks about the rental of the village station. It talks about snow plowing and approximately the cost for that, as well as hydro and some electrical work that has to take place. So there are quite a few costs outlined in the report, but again, that bylaw that was approved by council suggesting or indicating that all costs had to go through the MAP money, that's owned by council, so you can certainly, that's your ability to exempt them from that bylaw if council so chose to do so.
May I have a quick question?
Sure.
I wonder if the resolution actually would be best to have a report come back at the November meeting, just to identify what the costs are in response to the request for the exemption. I'm prepared to support the exemption right now, but it seems that there are a number of factors that it would be good to know what in fact we are, when we say we're going to provide, exactly what we're going to provide in kind, what does that look like?
Is there a seconder to get further information at November? Councillor Armour? Councillor Schumacher?
Through you, Your Worship, yeah, I would second that as well. Also, maybe looking at the idea that if we look at an exemption, because we are building this, I think it's a great opportunity for us to do this, but then maybe it is conversation with Kelly how 3 to 4 years from now, they then take into account. They built $80,000, which is great. They're putting it back into the lights and the display, but then how, as we build the momentum, how then do they incorporate that in kind that they'll cover in 2 to 3 years? That's sort of where I see. Let's help them to continue to build this and grow it, because I think it's, definitely a benefit to our community, but then how do they move forward to incorporate that in themselves?
Okay, I think clerk has a resolution here. I'll just read it. Moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that staff be directed to bring back a report to the November 7th, 2022 council meeting outlining the request from the Huntsville League of Bays Chamber of Commerce regarding winter product development events. Second, no? I think it's in what the costs are and for a potential exemption or something. So, yeah. All in favor of the resolution? That carries. Yeah, it was Councillor Armour. Okay. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that council appoints Gary Monahan, Fire Chief, as the Community Emergency Management Coordinator for the town of Huntsville effective September 30th, 2022. And further that motions SC 7607 and PIP 7212 be rescinded. And Tarmo, did you want to explain to council this motion?
Yes, Your Worship. So the The changes for this emergency management are necessitated because Mike Vagila, I don't know if I've heard, has resigned, who was our town CEMC. And so we do require a CEMC legislatively. So this would be to change the designation of, or replace Mike with Gary, and until we can sort out the structure more appropriately for the CEMC position.
Any questions from council? All in favor of the resolution? And that carries. And I guess with that, we wish Mike well in his new position, and he won't be with us after Friday any longer, so. Okay, we are at general information. See if we can get through this, and then we'll have a quick break before we go into closed session. Council correspondence is in your package. District of Muskoka updates. We'll start with Deputy Mayor Alcock and planning.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And since there are two meeting updates, I'll really try and highlight ones that I think are relevant, and that is the August 18th meeting, committee and followed by council approved an exemption request from Rayville Development, Inc., regarding the Woodstream development in Huntsville. And they were requesting an exemption to the water and sewer capacity allocation strategy because their phase 3 that they're ready to go, and they've actually started, only allowed for 50 additional units, and they requested an allocation of up to 77 units. And it was a great presentation, and we approved that, and as I said, had a special council meeting to make it happen, make it so. So another item at that meeting I thought was relevant was an update to our financial contributions under the Affordable Housing Program, and such as rent supplements. We provide $235 per month towards a unit, and actually over 300 units a month. That has been increased, that supplement, to up to $500 per month. The Ontario Renovates program, up until now, people who applied for that program had to have no more than a $435,000 property value, and which did not align with current prices, so that was raised to $694,000. And finally, the Muskoka Affordable Housing MAHIP Initiative, Capital Incentive Initiative, we've upped that for a 7-year commitment to $15,000, 10-year commitment $40,000, 20-year commitment $80,000. And so, last thing, we also approved staff to carry out negotiations for the potential closure of the information center on Highway 11. And further negotiations are underway between the town of Gravenhurst, MTMA, and MTO with the district on that. At the September 22nd meeting, which was just last week, we had a number of updates around the Children and Senior Services Ontario Works, regarding community grants update, and there were a number of local Huntsville organizations that received some grant funding under that. Under planning, we approved the draft plan of subdivision agreement for Black Forest, which is the plan of subdivision on Lake Vernon. And we also had a water and wastewater capacity and allocation strategy update. They're moving really swiftly on that. That has a particular, should be of particular interest to the town of Huntsville because, as we talked about before, if all of the development approvals that have been approved over the last gazillions of years in Huntsville, we'd be in a very serious way. We would have a real shortfall of capacity. So that is currently being reviewed by both Public Works here at the town of Huntsville, planning at town of Huntsville, with the planning and Public Works at the district. And I think, oops, I'm missing a page, I think. I have one last item, because this, under environment, we had a significant and great presentation on the integrated watershed management initiatives. For those who will remember, we received over $4 million from the province, we being the district, to look at 12 different areas regarding, after our last flood incident in Huntsville and Bracebridge. And so there were 12 distinct projects that are absolutely amazing, great information coming out of it. One of them is a flood hazard identification model. And that has actually been developed, and what it allows everyone to do is to input data, variables as to our, let's say our current weather events, and predict what it will do in the entire Muskoka watershed, given the circumstances like severe rains and all of that. So that was actually a really exciting report, and I would recommend to everybody look at that, because there will be some pretty serious recommendations coming out of that. That's it.
Any questions? Councillor Withey, Health Services.
Thank you. So I'm doing both reports?
Sure.
Wasn't really prepared for both. I thought it was kind of weird. But anyways, okay, August 18th. I won't without delay. We had a presentation for funding from District for Hospice, which isn't the first time. They've constantly come back and asked for money because they're not getting the funding from the province as they expect. There was operations. Basically, we get the same reports every month about what's going on with Fairburn, what's going on at the Pines for operations. There is a mutual assistance agreement with the County of Halliburton that was discussed, similar to what we have with other jurisdictions surrounding us for emergency management. And that was about it for that one. 22nd, last week. Really interesting report about dementia care trends in Muskoka. So, as we know, as people are living longer, dementia is on the increase. We've got, and this sort of speaks back to our earlier deputation this evening, because a lot of them end up as ALC patients in hospitals because we don't have the facilities for them. And with our, in particular, aging population in Muskoka, it's even more accentuated. So that report was interesting. Let me just get back to I usually print these, but I wasn't ready to do both right now, so. I don't know why that's not. The usual updates. I don't know why this isn't opening. Here we go. Sorry. There was the paramedic services asked to keep a couple of vehicles as there's supply chain issues are making it difficult to acquire new ambulances. So they want to increase the ambulance fleet from 13 to 16 by retaining 3 vehicles that they would have retired. Councillor Armour probably knows all about this stuff, but it's tough to find ambulances out there. Community paramedicine program update, which is, we're continuing that, which I think is a very important service for the community. And that was about it that's notable there. So that's the reports. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson, Engineering.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. I wasn't at the last Public Works meeting. Unfortunately, they didn't have it on the regularly scheduled date, and they had it after I'd already flown to Ireland, and so I was spending a lot of time trying to find my lost luggage, by the way, and I still haven't found it, but I do have some information here for you with regards to solid waste collection. As of November the 1st, we have a new provider, new service provider for the District of Muskoka. And with that, there are some changes also in the amount of garbage that we will be allowed to leave at the curb. So if you're in the rural area now, you're allowed 3 bags of garbage per week. That will be reduced to 2 as of November 1st. And if you're in the urban core, you're now allowed 2, and that'll be reduced to 1 as of November 1st. So in addition to that, of course, there's been the expansion of the green bin program, which, and I haven't got an update on that. Unfortunately, Director Mack was not at our meeting today, and I haven't been in touch with her, but I'll find out exactly where the status of that is. The whole idea behind the green bin expansion was that everyone in Huntsville, in the urban core at least, would have a green bin, and that would go a long ways toward alleviating the amount of garbage would have to be put at the curb each week, because, you know, as I'm sure we're all aware, the majority of the weight in any of our garbage bags is our organics and stuff like that. So if we can convert that. So the whole idea behind all of this is because of, as we know, we have one landfill site now for all of Muskoka, and that's the Rosemorne site in Bracebridge. And we've been filling it up at an inordinately quick rate, much quicker than it should be, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we're not redirecting recyclables. And so this is all in an effort to encourage the improvement in the recycling of recyclables and so on and so forth, and also then also the enhancement of the green bin program as well. So yeah, at the rate we're going right now, the landfill site in Bracebridge at Rosemorne would be filled up, and it'd have to be a new one by 2036. And that is way ahead of schedule what had been planned initially when we went to the one landfill site there. So, and the cost of a new landfill site, as I think we heard Chair Klink talking about it today, is if we have to go that route, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. And then you have to find the location and go through all the EA process, and it's just not something you just go out and, well, we have an empty field here, we'll put it here for the time being, that kind of thing. So that's the big change, and if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them, but unfortunately, that's the information I have at this point. So as of November 1st, expect the big changes to be happening in terms of the amount of garbage you can put out at the curb. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the message to our community is that the bag limit is going down either from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1 wherever you live, and that it is to save the landfill site, though. It's to encourage the community to sort better, do more recycling, do organics where possible. I think we're going to hear a lot from the community. I know I already have, but it's something that needs to be done. So. Okay, we had finance, we just had it this morning, and we had a couple of updates on where we are at financially, some good, some bad, but probably all washed at the end. We had one rather gloomy report from the Muskoka Employment Partnership and Labor Market, and we don't have any workers left here in Muskoka. We are 20% lower than the Ontario average on workforce, and that's because our population is definitely aging, and a lot of the population from the age 55 to 65 is no longer interested in being in the workforce either. So it's gloomy in Muskoka, and they didn't come up with any solutions, just the gloomy picture. But that was pretty much finance today. At the August council meeting, We had a special one actually to do an exception for the water and sewer capacity allocation to the Woodstream development. The district only allows 50 at a time, and they made a good case for when they're building the roads and extending subdivisions. So they asked for an exemption to get 70. It was approved. It was a good move. And was it 77? Okay, thank you for that. Anyways, it was a special meeting. It was a good move for that. And at our council meeting today, a couple of things of interest. The IDEA group, which is our inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism group. They made a recommendation for a grant program at district, which was accepted. And the other resolution, there was really very few resolutions, was for the district to sign the Muskoka Area Indigenous Leadership Table Friendship Agreement on October 6th. And I'm happy to say that I will be there signing on behalf of Huntsville as well. So all of Muskoka municipalities and all of our Indigenous partners are going to sign that agreement on October 6th. And other than that, we had a little bit of enclosed session that we won't be talking about. So that's it, unless there's any questions. Okay, where are we, Tanya? Oh, Tarmo. I think when we did that last resolution, you were going to speak about Mike Badlett as well.
Yeah, I didn't
Do you wanna-
want to confuse the two issues there. I apologize. So just a little bit of an acknowledgement of Mike and his contributions to the town of Huntsville. Mike started back in January of 2000 as a volunteer firefighter, and he was a volunteer firefighter for 12 years before being appointed as the fire prevention officer for the town. You know, his passion for his work is evident. You know, in the short time that I've been with the town, I've learned more about emergency services than I thought. You know, I'd grown up in that system and I thought I knew quite a bit, but Mike definitely knows quite a bit more. He was an essential team member through several emergencies that the town went through, most notably the floods of 2012, 13, 16, and 19. A leader there. He will be staying on as a volunteer firefighter out of the Port Sydney Hall for us, so he will still be there. And I'm taken to understand that Mike is willing to still do a lot of the water measurements for the flood water levels because it's a passion of his and he's excellent at it. So just, you know, my thanks and a recognition of Mike's very important contribution to the town of Huntsville. He'll be missed.
Thanks, Tarmo. Okay, we're going to have a break. We can't go into closed session until after our break. So we're going to have a quick 7-minute break. And we'll just wait 30 seconds while we go on break. Okay. We are back. And we are going to go into closed session. And after the motion has been adopted, we need to pause again till we get there. Oh, my goodness. Moved by Counselor Withey, seconded by Counselor Weeb. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 8 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following matters under the Municipal Act. Section 239, advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, confidential report, Ops 2022-31. Section 239, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, confidential report 2022-74, 2022-46, 2022-75. Section 239, litigation or potential litigation, confidential report, development 2022-151, Craig Development Sustainable Housing, confidential report, development 2022-150, community planning permit bylaw, confidential report 2022-153, OLT appeal, OLT 22-002438, 190 Chaffey Township Road, verbal update, Langmaid's Island Corporation, OLT 22-00969, Section 239, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 12.4.1, operations and protective services, division update, and 12.4.2, confidential report, HR 2022-10. Questions? All in favor? Okay, I have a feeling it'll be a lengthy closed session, and I have no Okay, we are back live, and I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Alcock. Be it resolved that the recommendation regarding confidential report Corp. 2022-31 be adopted. All in favor? And that carries. And I need a mover and a seconder, Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Armour. Thank you. Be it resolved that a bylaw declaring part of town-owned property ID 23, PIN number 48099035, Block M, Plan 503 Burnell as surplus to municipal needs, and that the property be sold to the abutting landowner for the amount of $2,000 plus legal and advertising expenses as outlined in Confidential Report Corp. 2246, and further that public notice be provided as per the provision of notice policy, and further that the disposition bylaw be presented to council for final approval, and further that the mayor and clerk are authorized to execute all documents necessary to finalize the sale of said town-owned property. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Withey. Be it resolved that the recommendation outlined within Confidential Report Corp. 2022-75 be adopted. All in favor? And that one carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that the town retain legal services to assist in the Ontario Land Tribunal appeals of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, and that council be directed to request that the OLT approve the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, save and except for those site-specific designations of the property subject to the appeals, and further that staff be directed to engage with the appellants to attempt to resolve the appeals and report back. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that the recommendation contained in Confidential Report HR 2022-10 be approved. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that Confirmation Bylaw 2022-120 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 26th day of September 2022. All in favor? And that carries. And finally, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 9:45 p.m. All in favor?